This video is sponsored by NordPass.
Welcome back to BTEKT. I'm back on the roof. This time I'm in sunny-ish Florida. Really happy you're joining me for this, which I think is going to be the biggest review for me of the year so far, because this is my phone of the year so far, the Xperia 1 Mark II. I love it. This t-shirt's for sale, by the way. This does a great job at shooting RAW and a million other things. But the thing is, this phone does an amazing job of shooting RAW as well, and it's really impressive. I've never ever loved an iPhone as much as I've loved this one. So the whole point of this video is to find out which one of these phones is right for you and to just get an idea as to how they stack up. It might not be what you're expecting. Anyway, without any further ado, hit like, subscribe, notification bell, all that stuff, and let's get into it. So the first thing that I want us to clock here at the beginning of this whole process is that the 12 Pro, $1,100 in the States, similar pricing around the world in your own currency, in the UK as well in pounds. Now that version starts, and it is 128 gigs, whereas the Xperia 1 Mark II started a little bit more expensive when it launched, sort of back in June, or when it was on sale. But this one, or they all have 256 gigs of storage and expandable memory as well, so you can get up to a terabyte SD card in there. So when we compare these two phones now, it's worth remembering, this is really important, that the Xperia 1 Mark II, you can now get it for closer to iPhone 12 money. So while we're comparing it here with the 12 Pro, I want you to remember we're not talking about original Xperia 1 Mark II pricing anymore. Pricing for the iPhone kind of stays where it is for a year, more or less. Xperia pricing, you get the free headphones I can never remember the name of, if you're lucky and you get in there early, but you're paying early doors pricing. Pretty soon that falls away. With that said, let's get into it now. Design-wise, the first thing you'll notice here, of course, is the aspect ratio. When you look at them, it's completely different. 21:9 here on the Xperia 1 Mark II. For me, it gives you, as I've said before, a big phone experience, but in a smaller phone, a more compact size really than you would expect. It feels really good in the hand. Over here on the iPhone, it's a more traditional shape. I mean, it's a little bit stockier, but it looks absolutely stunning. I mean, no one's going to tell you this is not an incredibly good looking phone. I'd be surprised anyway. What have we got here? Well, the first thing, you pick them up as you notice that the iPhone is much heavier. It feels much heavier. For sustained, reading or even taking a long phone call, something like that, you're going to feel that. I much prefer the Sony approach of keeping it as light as possible. The iPhone approach is also a bit more blingy, I think it's fair to say. It's kind of more like a high-end watch, whereas on the Sony here, it's very low-key. This is a phone, it kind of has nothing to prove. It's for people who aren't trying to prove anything. They want to keep their phone on the down low, and I have to say I like that. Now, if we look over here on the front, of course, on the iPhone, Face ID is even quicker. It works incredibly well. I really like it, but then again, I don't have a problem with the fingerprint scanner over here on the Xperia 1 Mark II. It's very, very quick. They're both very, very quick. For me, there's no overall winner here. They're just two different ways of doing things. One could argue, using masks all the time, maybe, the fingerprint scanner is a bit more useful during COVID, but well, hopefully COVID's not going to be around much longer. There's a vaccine on the way, so I've been told. I really hope so. Anyway, so yeah, overall, the other thing I want to mention here is the headphone jack. For a lot of people, it's still a deal breaker, and we're running out of options now, aren't we? For serious phones with headphone jacks. Xperia 1 Mark II, it has it. Before we go any further, I have to tell you about Nord and why I'm so happy that we've teamed up with NordPass. It's good news for all of you who follow us here at BTEKT, because we now have a whopping 70% discount thanks to our friends at NordPass to give to you. I'm really excited about that. We always hope when we team up with brands that they're going to be, absolutely top level, and Nord is. And I say that because I've been using NordVPN for years, years and years, and for the last few weeks I've been using NordPass, and it is absolutely up to the standard you'd hope for. And from a security perspective, juggling what feels like millions of passwords, two-factor authentication, all kinds of sensitive information, this is a massively important product. It really works well. Storing all your passwords in one place is essential now, and you want them to be properly protected, all of that information. Nord's reputation here is absolutely solid. You can shop online with ease because NordPass remembers your credit card details. Autofill with a click generates secure passwords. Easier to stay safe. I mean, I could go on, you get the point. The other thing I really like though, and I want to mention, is they have a zero knowledge architecture, so your data is encrypted on your device. It never goes over to their servers without being encrypted first. It's absolutely secure and safe. Really, really happy to team up with them, and that 70% discount could be yours. Thank you for supporting BTEKT, and thank you to NordPass. Display and speakers then. Okay, both displays are absolutely superb. I love them both, but they both have one weakness, and that is the 60 Hz refresh rate. Motion blur reduction on the Sony helped, but I didn't really find it to be a problem on the iPhone. Should it be at least 90 Hz? Well, I would say definitely in the case of the iPhone. It's a bit more forgivable perhaps with the Xperia, because it's a 4K display. So that's the trade-off, and for me, you know, it's worth it. I mean, when you see 4K content on the Xperia here, it's absolutely stunning. I mean, we're talking 643 pixels per inch versus 460 on the iPhone. 460 is fine, but on the Xperia, with the right content, cinema, you know, 21:9, it is something to behold. What I will say though, is when you step outside into bright sunshine, you immediately notice the iPhone is more usable. You can get away with it on the Xperia 1 Mark II, but you need to make sure that adaptive brightness is on, and you need to make sure you've whacked it way up as high as it will go. Then you'll get through. But the iPhone walks it in that sense. 1200 peak nits, lovely. Now, in terms of the sound, they both sound good. They have a different approach. Sony wins in terms of proper stereo separation, and perhaps with the detail, more nuanced, as I've said before. However, I think I prefer the iPhone sound, because even though it doesn't have quite the same level of stereo separation, it's a bit bassier, there's plenty of room in the sound, and it's got a nice punch to it, which I really appreciate. It's very close, but I do like the iPhone approach here. Now, one thing I want to deal with, which I should have said earlier in the design section, is that you've got Gorilla Glass 6 front and back on the Sony, but you've got ceramic shield over on the Apple here. Now look, Apple, they really get into it on the marketing front, and sometimes if we're not all very careful, we too can get caught up with it. All I'm going to say is ceramic shield I would expect to perform pretty much identically to Gorilla Glass. I mean, it's developed with Corning, who make Gorilla Glass. On paper it's better. In reality, from the tests I've seen, just be really careful with both of these phones. Put them in a case, get a screen protector on them if that's your thing, but I wouldn't put any extra confidence in this ceramic shield stuff. I just wanted to put that out there. Now, performance. Both are incredibly fast. If you're a power user, you're not going to have a problem with either of these phones. Snapdragon 865, of course, in the Sony here. Bionic Apple A14 Bionic chip in the iPhone. They're both incredibly fast. It's basically impossible to slow these things down. Even super intensive games, no problem at all. I mean, these are true powerhouses. All I will say though is that 5G doesn't work in the Xperia phones in the USA. So if you're one of our American friends watching this, that almost certainly will put most of you towards the iPhone. Doesn't worry me, because I'm, you know, from Europe, but it's worth flagging that if 5G is a big deal for you. Personally, I think too much has been made of 5G, but I still would rather have it than not, obviously, and I think it's going to get more useful in the future. Right now, whatever. Should I say whatever? That's a bit dismissive. I didn't mean it. Let's move on. So now let's talk about the cameras. Now we're going to do a separate video where we just get into the photography and videography capabilities of these two phones, and we give that all the treatment that it truly deserves. But what I want to do now is just look at these photos in auto mode. I think it's fair to say, let me know what you think. The iPhone is a bit more vivid. It's got more of the modes, of course, if you want to get into nighttime stuff. All of that is great. Computationally speaking, it wins, hands down. Auto mode, it's got the modes that most people want, portrait and stuff, night portrait even. The Sony, however, takes a different approach. Auto mode, I would argue, is good enough, but it should be better, especially in low light. Apple wins out there completely for my mind. But for me, the reason why I love the Sony so much is because it's encouraged me as a far from pro photographer to get into those pro modes, use them, understand them, and develop my appreciation of proper photography. I've got a long way to go, but it's a really fun experience, and so they're different approaches. That said, I would love to see Sony go down the computational route more and get some of these modes in there, just because I think a lot of people, myself included, would benefit from that. So do make sure that you are subbed for the videography and photography special coming up, comparing these two phones' capabilities, because I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a good one. But let's wrap this one up now and just work out which one's going to be right for you. I would say if you're an audiophile and you're open-minded as to which ecosystem you go for, you're not stuck in either one, which of course happens a lot, and you want something a bit unique, and you love that aspect ratio, which I have to say I didn't think I would, but I absolutely love it, and you want a less heavy, more usable kind of daily driver, it's a really interesting choice, the Sony. It's a talking point. Everywhere I've been in Florida, people like to see the Sony, they like to see the Pro mode, how it works, and they love it. It's exclusive, it's exciting. iPhones are everywhere, but that doesn't mean they're not beautiful, and we all know, don't we? 99% of everyone around the world, they want iPhones. They're the big thing. It's an American icon. So look, for me personally, if it was my money on the line, I'm actually going to hold that decision until I finish the photography and videography shootout video, which we're just doing now. Almost finished. I'm going to give you my full and final verdict at that point, but there's a couple of things I want to leave you to think about here. One, Apple gives you 5 years of support based on their previous performance, super regular software, security updates, OS upgrades. I mean, they are the real deal, and no one comes close to them when it comes to that. Sony is getting better and better on that front, but I want them to come out and tell us what they're going to do. 3 years, you know, OS upgrades. I've heard rumors, I've seen leaked reports. I want to hear it from Sony now. But yeah, for me, if you're an audiophile and you appreciate the headphone jack, it's unique. I'm kind of leaning that way, but I want to see more of what the iPhone can do. iPhone 12 Pro, that is. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to NordPass for sponsoring it. I'll see you next time.